I'll have you know, Maggie just asked me the name of the Slinky dog in Toy Story.
Well, I didn't know if he had I was thinking he had a 1-syllable name. I guess it's just Slinky. Maybe they call him Slink for short.
No,
I don't know.
That's too cool and insidious. I don't
know. Woody was like
he has to have like a velvet suit jacket. Oh, Slink's coming to town.
Woody was the kind of guy who gave everybody these like really cool 1-syllable
You cannot
nicknames.
have Woody and Slink going off to the bar together.
I think we can. They're going to destroy that bar.
My wingman Slink.
But he could, because of his little slinky body. He could whip the women into his little circle.
He could whip the women.
No, I just mean like a whip around. No, because you know how like sometimes a wingman will bring his arm around like, oh, here's my buddy Woody, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he could
scoot his behind.
He
around
could get the
ladies.
entire bar in one circle of kumbaya.
Circle of Slink.
What are we talking about today, Cam? Speaking of messed up childhoods, what are we doing today?
So we're talking about Halo, the first Halo, which is called Halo Combat Evolved. And this is sort of based on a couple episodes we've done lately. We did one about Destiny 2 and the future of that franchise. And that was Bungie's big sci-fi shooter franchise after Halo. And then we also did an episode on Fallout 3 a couple months ago, which is sort of a retrospective of me talking about a game from 2008. And that got me on the train. I'm working on a science fiction project right now, so I've been revisiting a lot of my favorites in that genre. And Halo was maybe the formative science fiction series of my childhood. And
I feel like it was also just like a formative game for every boy your age.
Oh, totally.
Do you know what I mean?
And for the medium it was working in, it remains groundbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a case to be made that the first trilogy, the Halo 1, 2, and 3, are more important to the millennial generation, than the Star Wars prequels were.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was our major influential, and that's sort of the legacy of Star Wars, is its influence. Is it becoming the cookie cutter, the thing that is imitated endlessly? I think the Halo trilogy was that for our generation. So it's huge and important. It's a sprawling epic that's been going for 25 years. It's multimedia. I read the books. I read the comics.
That's right, you did.
I haven't watched the show.
Well, yeah.
I've played all the games.
Yep.
And yeah, so this is sort of a mix of those two previous episodes where I'm looking back on Halo, but I want to talk about sort of the past and future of this franchise.
Awesome. And as with Fallout and Destiny, I have not played Halo. I've watched it being played, but it was never, again, I didn't have video games as a kid, and then now I have no interest in. I'm not a big. I don't care about shooters. I don't care about aliens.
Right.
This is not my kind of game, but I know it's so important to you and a lot of people.
And you do bring an interesting voice to this discussion because of your very selective, pointed interest in sci-fi. Mm-hmm. There's just a little that appeals to you. You also bring the perspective of a gamer. And of course, you can talk about nostalgia for beloved childhood properties better than anyone else. So that's what this is. It's nostalgia. Because Halo didn't come out 20 years ago, but I first played this game 20 years ago. After Halo 2 came out, I played them both and discovered that franchise.
And that was so wild to me when you explained to me what you were doing for this game. I was like, you were 9 years old when you played. That to me feels so young to play a game like Halo, but I guess that was normal at the time.
Yeah, and I think we'll get into that, how it's coded as a sort of a younger type shooter with the aliens and the colors. We'll get into all that, but cool. What I did to prepare for this episode isn't just write up notes. I replayed the whole game. And it's the first time I've touched the first Halo in a while. Not 20 years, I've replayed these a bunch, but it's the first time in a while that I've replayed any of this game, never mind the whole thing. And I think the big takeaway, maybe the thesis statement going into this, is I feel a grumpy love for this. And I mean, weirdly, I think that's the prevailing emotion of your opinions about anything you loved 20 years ago.
Okay.
How you feel about any franchise that has continued to change and evolve.
Okay.
There's always a grumpiness about some element of the change, and there is an enduring love because it spoke to you at such an important, influential time in your life.
Yeah, because it's either at this point there have been so many changes through the franchise that it kind of sucks now, but you still have fond memories of when it was good, or you look back on it as an adult and realize, oh, it wasn't actually that good, but it still meant so much to me anyway. So I see what you mean.
Look at the way the conversation just sours over time, whether it's about Harry Potter, Star Wars, Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings. It's a grumpy love, you know?
That's very true, yeah.
There's an enduring loyalty, and then eventually you're like protective of the franchise. You're trying to protect it from the thing it's become.
Yeah.
There's some of that. And
yeah.
I think I have a little in that I'm going to try to rein in the course of this discussion, but I want to start with the idea of playing a remaster. Because the thing I love so much about this first game that really broke open the world of science fiction and of, shooters and this type of game for me was the art direction, the way this world is introduced. And the cool part about playing this again is that the game has a toggle. There's one button that they dedicate to this toggle, so every time you press it, you can switch between the original graphics and the remaster graphics. And just to take a second to make sense of that, imagine if you had that for a movie that was remade. We could press a button on the remote and switch right back to the original.
That would be very weird.
But also, the remake was a shot-for-shot recreation of all of the exact bones. It's an experience that I don't think you can have in any other medium.
Yeah, you kind of can only do that with a game. That's true. Yeah, interesting.
And no one's ever remade a show shot for shot that I know of.
No,
it's a very strange thing. And I was trying to process that because I really enjoyed this toggle, and I hit it thousands of times to the point that it unlocked an achievement for me doing it so many times. Cool. But swapping between the original graphics and the remaster, and if you're watching this episode on YouTube instead of listening to the podcast, I have a lot of my gameplay running in the background, and I'm constantly switching between the graphics modes, so it might be a better way to experience this episode, just so you can see more what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I was fascinated by the refresh that was done here. It wasn't a remake, right, where you start from the ground up and you reimagine and expand and improve on things. It was a remaster. So nothing changed except graphics, a little lighting engine, some color work, but they didn't change the levels themselves.
Okay, so the gameplay is exactly the same. Very cool. What did you think of the remastering of the graphics? I know that you played Diablo 2, they did it with Diablo 2 recently.
Right.
Where they redid the graphics and stuff, and so you were able to toggle back and forth between the same way. And I think you didn't really like the new graphics. Am I right on that? In Diablo 2?
Yeah, Diablo 2 is a much older game, and I think a much clunkier game. The reason that Halo 1 is still fun to play, even in the light of the 25 years of development influence it's had, where modern shooters, even modern shooters from Bungie, are much tighter and faster and better feeling than this one. But even playing it now, in 2024... it feels so good. It feels so good, and I enjoy the look of the graphics at the time. I enjoy the art direction. Cool. Art direction is timeless.
Yes. So then what do you think of the new graphics now?
Well, I don't like them. But,
okay.
It's not as clean as that, because some of the changes they made were huge quality of life improvements. And this was my complaint with Diablo 2, because I think Diablo 2 is just fundamentally a clunkier game than Diablo 3, Diablo 4.
Yeah.
And they were so rigid in the work they did remastering that game that they didn't do any of the little behind-the-scenes fixes that would just make it better to play.
Quality of life changes.
They did one where you pick up gold automatically.
Okay.
And you can turn that off. But I think if you've given it 2 months and just given it some of the quality of life features that you had in Diablo 3, you could make them optional. You could make them, you can toggle it off in the menus. Yeah. I just think that one felt so much older than the first Halo did.
So it wasn't even worth bothering with the new graphics, because it was still this game kind of is not very fun.
For me, and you. I know that I'm the only person who has this opinion.
I know so many people love Diablo 2.
The bones of Halo 1 are stronger for me than the bones of Diablo 2.
Okay, cool.
The quality of life improvements, there are some levels in this game that are incredibly dark. And even more than that, incredibly poorly lit. And they added, it's reductive to say it like this, but they added arrows a little bit that are kind of, there are some levels where you're going in and out of these towers and locations.
Like directional arrows, not weapon arrows.
Right, but they're kind of just open triangles.
Okay.
And occasional flashing lights. It's subtle and it's embedded within the world. It's not literally just an arrow slapped on.
Okay, but it's just kind of helping you navigate a little bit more easily.
I didn't get lost. Okay. And they lit up some of those areas that are just annoyingly dark. So some of those massive quality of life improvements where there were parts of the level where I just played through with the new graphics because it was just less of a hassle.
Okay, yeah.
But In other ways, I thought the remaster, the graphical changes were a big step down. And I kind of thought they overstepped the job of a remaster.
Oh.
Because at times, I think they changed the art direction.
Okay.
And a lot of the footage I put in the YouTube version of this is me trying to exemplify that, where I go to the moments that for me are the most memorable. There are certain levels that are much more famous. There's one on the beach called The Silent Cartographer.
Okay.
And that's an incredibly beloved level, to the point that the most recent Halo game, which is being made by a different studio, after Bungie moved on from Halo, Microsoft made a new studio with the sole purpose of, you're going to make Halo games. And the Halo games they made 4 and 5 were very, I would say those are huge departures from what Halo was.
Yeah.
New types of enemies, new locations, and I didn't like them. Most people didn't like them just because it strayed too far from what I wanted this franchise to be. And then they made Halo Infinite. And that was sort of a mess for different reasons. But Halo Infinite was so rigidly, okay, we'll just give you what you like, where they basically took the art direction and look of one level from Halo 1 and made that the entire world.
Oh, wow, okay.
They took that level, the look, the colors, the feel of it, they blew it up and made an open world, basically one massive level where you have to do things within that terrain.
Okay.
But the nostalgia for certain looks, certain feels within the first Halo game are so beloved that you can make an entire game out of one level.
Okay, wow, very cool.
So when you change some of that art direction in the remaster, I think, of course, I'm going to chafe a little against that. And
okay.
what I mean there is partially that every surface, this is the first thing I noticed, hitting that toggle 100 times in the first level, almost every single visible surface is busy with textures, with patterns. And when you look at the old graphics, there'll be faint patterns and textures on things, but it's like they upped the contrast a lot in the remaster, so everything is just very visually busy.
Okay, and in the original, it's not like that. From what I can remember and have seen, it's like simpler and like flatter,
blocky almost.
Yeah,
and I would say it's incredibly sparse in moments, especially when you're inside somewhere.
Yeah,
it's a lot of gray with like very faint patterns on it.
Because you're in like spaceships and stuff.
Of course.
Yeah.
And I think that's the fun of it.
Yeah.
But in the remaster, it's very contrasty. It's very busy. And I think it makes the game feel very cluttered.
Okay.
Which for me at least destroys is a dramatic word, but I prefer the beauty and simplicity, that alien feel that so much of the original graphics achieved. And in some cases, I think, and this is more art direction, I guess, than like texture packs, but I think they upset some of the essential color palette and tone of the game. Because, I don't know, I've been very interested in color palettes lately. I'm noticing through some of these episodes, but there's a predominance, is that a word, of blue in the remaster. And when I was playing more and more of the game with the old graphics, I would say the main colors of the first Halo game are a light gray and kind of a muted purple.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And if you replace those with a huge emphasis on blue, I think you very much change the tone.
That's a big change. I mean, it's similar. It's in the same family, but I mean, the when there's like a predominance of color, especially like in your design and your overall look, it's not something you should necessarily notice. But if it changes and you notice it, that's like a problem, or it should be on purpose. You know, like this is a shift. Even if you're not like thinking about the main color here is blue, if you notice that it's different, then like that has to mean something. There has to be a use behind that. So the fact that that's just the shift in a remaster, that doesn't seem right.
And I felt like the North Star changed, where those were kind of the thesis colors. And I felt like it became blue, which makes the game almost feel too obviously sci-fi. Because this isn't a normal grim sci-fi slog. This, and the reason I still love this franchise, even through the ups and downs in subsequent games, is that this is a big, colorful space fantasy epic. It's not like the most hard-boiled sci-fi, the stuff that just rolls my eyes into the back of my head.
Yeah.
It's like the enemies banter with each other. They're all goofy looking. There's ones with like big triangle heads and you can shoot the little methane packs and they kind of blow up. You can turn on a feature called grunts are like the tiniest enemies who are always bickering with each other in these squeaky like cartoon voices. You can turn on a feature where if you get a headshot, like it's called Grunt Birthday Party, so confetti explodes out of the air, and you hear children saying, "Yay!"
Oh.
Like, there's a goofiness to this game.
Okay.
Right? And the color is a big part of that. It is about bright neon colors and goofy character designs.
Yeah, and I would think that even that, like, the simplistic, like, forms and, like, shapes and, like, almost lack of texture makes sense with that feel. So it's weird to try to, like, gridify it and like as in grit, not grid.
Yeah.
Like to try to like add texture and change the colors to be more like blue and more like quote unquote adult, you know?
Yes.
That seems like a strange move.
It almost feels like you're embarrassed of what the original felt like.
And
or
maybe,
you just have a different vision, I guess,
or maybe
of this
they're
game.
maybe they're trying to appeal to the audience, which are millennial children now grown up.
Right,
maybe
but
that's
you
what
were
it is.
the influencer.
Yeah.
You were the original influencer, so don't pivot to something else now.
Yeah.
Like, the grunts are one of the main enemy archetypes. Another one is the elites. And when this game came out, I was pronouncing that elite. I'd never seen the word
elite. That's
I'd never
so
seen the, but like
cute.
those guys, they're the big hulking ones with these freaky kind of Cthulhu-y mouths.
Yeah.
And they are very blue.
Okay.
And then when you meet tough ones on the spaceship, they're just all red. Like it's a Mario Luigi color palette swap.
Awesome.
It's simple.
Love that.
But jackals are the other enemy type. And those are these weird, like spindly, kind of velociraptor pleekly looking guys.
Okay.
And they carry a shield with them.
Okay.
And it's like, how do you shoot around the shield to get to the guy?
Neat. And what color are they?
Well, they're like kind of muted tones of just like there's a lot of skin showing.
Okay.
But the shield is like a bright, sparkly color.
Oh, okay.
So there is
Cool.
a lot, and the main gun that the grunts have is a plasma pistol, and that shoots bright green like blobs of plasma.
Neat.
So there's a lot of color coming off of these goofy designed enemies who are like bantering and bickering and kind of jumping back and forth as you're going against them.
That's fun.
And I think changing that to make it a little more muted, to make it more visually busy, I think that dulls some of that memorable classic edge that I love so much about the way these characters are designed.
Yeah.
Some of it's good with the quality of life shifts. Some of it I don't like. Basically, I'm grateful that you can toggle it on and off because I really enjoyed doing that. And I cannot imagine how difficult this was as a prospect for the team of, okay, we have to try to, touching a classic at all.
Yeah, like what do you?
Is difficult.
Those are hard decisions to make. How much do you change? You want it to be different enough that it feels like worth it to have done it, but you don't want it to be so different that it feels like a departure. So yeah, I'm sure that was incredibly difficult for them to do.
Moving into a bit more of a gameplay discussion, I wanted to spend a second on the difficulty of the game and the mechanics.
Okay.
So I replayed this game on the normal difficulty, which is, I think, what I was playing back in the day. I've tried it on all of them, but once it gets too hard, it's not fun for me. I don't like.
I'm with you there. I don't like when games are too hard.
I don't like the endless challenge. I also, when there is a narrative, I want to move at a good pace through it.
Yeah, you want to keep the story going. You don't want to get stuck on a level for hours and then it ruins the flow.
I don't want to ruin the pacing of a story.
Yeah.
But replaying it in the back half of the game, I was rocked by Halo 1. So the first half of the game is the Covenant. That's the name of the aliens. So you've got the grunts, the elites, and the jackals, and they're part of the Covenant.
Oh, I see. Okay.
That's the big term for all these aliens.
This is great. I'm learning so much. This is more I've known about Halo than the rest of my entire life. So this is awesome. Okay.
And some of that is them coming to Earth or whatever. I don't know what the fucking planets are called. Some of it is you fighting them on what looks like Earth, and some of it is you going up into their spaceships or their constructs and fighting them there.
Cool.
And then it introduces this totally different type of enemy. And in my memory, this was like one level of the game. It is firmly the back half of this game. And this enemy type is called the Flood.
Okay.
And it's basically the game shifts to like zombie survival horror.
Oh, wow.
So the Flood, they're in these little like bug forms with these big heads and these little spindly legs. And they're all beige and gross. And they run over to usually like your fellow soldiers and eat them and cannibalize them and like reanimate their corpses. And they've got all these pustules and freaky limbs and they like shamble after you. And some of them still have their like human guns.
Oh, no.
So you have to not only shoot the reanimated corpses, but all the other bugs running around.
That are creating more and more.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, that's fun.
And that's where the game shifts from, I'm using all these fun plasma weapons I'm getting from the aliens, to, okay, I'm using like shotguns because I need to cover as much ground as possible to kill all these bug things running around or running at me.
Yeah.
So that's the second half of this game. Very, very different shift. There's a desperation, there's an ugliness, there's a tragedy to it.
Well, and that's brilliant after you've like spent the first half of the game getting really invested, and then all of a sudden you have to like, that's really interesting.
And there will be moments where you and the Covenant are working to kill the Flood, and then you have to fight whoever survives.
Oh, so the Flood is not part of the Covenant?
No.
Oh,
no.
Wow.
It's very interesting.
Third party.
How it kind of turns this conflict on its head. And the Flood, if they get close enough into melee range, they hit hard.
Yeah.
And the way you heal in this game, you heal to a certain point, and then you need like a health pack. But the delay before you start auto-healing is long.
Oh, no.
Like, even at the best of times, just fighting the Covenant, it is a long delay before you start healing.
Okay.
And there are so many moments. I mean, you saw when I was playing the frustration that mounted throughout the experience.
Oh, yeah. There was one moment. You spent, like, I don't know, probably an hour trying to play this, like, one level. You kept dying. You looked so frustrated. I'm just, like, sitting happily in the corner playing Baldur's Gate, and I just see you keep continuing to go, just totally ruining it. And it's great because, like, I can just, reload my saves. And Baldur's Gate, it's different.
I would be on a spaceship, and there were these little bottleneck moments where I had to go down a hallway and into a room, and there would be one elite in the other room who had a bunch of plasma grenades, and he was just an MLB pitcher. And the second I was within range, and there are frag grenades, like normal grenades that you have, and then the aliens have plasma grenades, which are big, glowy, and blue, and if they hit you, they stick to you.
Oh, no. That's
so
terrible.
when he's pitching them through the door, if they touch me, it's game over.
Oh, no.
Or it'll take, 30 seconds for me to start healing. Mm-hmm. So there are bottleneck moments that just kicked my ass.
So was it that hard when you first played it? Do you remember it being that hard?
I mean,
it must have been.
I guess.
10-year-old you must have been struggling the same way you are now.
But it was only certain moments. It was difficulty spikes. It wasn't consistent through the game. And I think this is part of just game design, that the later games are better balanced.
Yeah.
They'd learn
I feel like
a
that's
bit more.
how games used to be. It was like they would be like one consistent difficulty. Maybe it gets a little harder as you go, and then there's like it's randomly like impossible boss fights that you're like, what is this?
And the game has fun with you because sometimes those little grunts, those little goofy smaller enemies with the triangle heads, they would just give some grunts rocket launchers and not tell you, and then you would just explode.
Oh, cool.
So there are plenty of moments that are goofy, or if they charge up that little dinky plasma pistol they have, that will completely knock out your health, and you'll be one shot away from dying.
Oh, jeez.
But I liked that because it kind of kept me on my toes.
Sure, it keeps it interesting.
The difficulty of it was fun. And I think this is where the difficulty question really matters. Because if a game is hard, when you lose, it has to feel like it was within your control.
Yes, like you have to when you lose a fight or a level, you have to like leave that feeling like, okay, I think I know what I could do differently next time, or I know what I have to do.
Yes, you learn something.
Yes, you're like, okay, I can go back, like that sucked, that was frustrating, and there were parts of it that were out of my control, but I know what I need to do, and I'm motivated to try it again.
Yes, you're not purely discouraged from playing.
Yeah, because that's what really gets me, is when something is just so hard that you just feel discouraged. It's like, this is no longer fun. And something can be frustrating and difficult, but still fun.
Yes.
If you have that element of like control and hope and optimism and motivation. If you don't have that, it's not fun.
And that was the thing I found myself marveling at as I played through more of the game, as I hit more of these bottlenecks, and, eventually muscled through. I made it through the whole game. Absolutely, there were frustrating moments. Mm-hmm. But the thing the fact that I could learn from these situations and figure out, okay, there's a creative solution here, and muscle my way through, instead of just hitting a brick wall and never finishing the game, I think that is a testament. And the more of these difficult moments you have, the more it strains the mechanics. If they're not good enough, if it doesn't feel good to play, and it doesn't feel reactive to what you're trying to do, that's what discourages me from playing on. And the mechanics are so rock solid here. From the movement, the shooting. This series, and of course Bungie's later games, it's the best fundamentals of any shooter. The way how fast you walk, the way moving feels, the way reloading feels, the cool animations that you do with the guns, and even when you switch through your weapons. The Halo 1 pistol is different and better than any of the other Halo pistols. And when you switch to it, you do this cool cock thing where you like kick up the gun. And when you switch to the assault rifle, you kind of flick it to the side. It's just, it feels cool.
Yeah,
But they also feel good to hold, to shoot. Like the weapons, they have weight. They have an interesting variety. They feel like they have different real use cases. Does the game feel smooth and natural and reflexive and reactive to play? These are all kind of X factors.
Yeah.
But when you play a game that, if you play a platformer, which I know you're more into, if it feels floaty or not reactive,
it's the worst.
It doesn't matter how good it looks.
Yeah, right.
And the fact that I don't love Halo because of the new cutting edge graphics, I don't care that the old ones are kind of clunky and sometimes weird and hard to see.
Sure.
It's the mechanics
it's fun to play
that are so good.
Does your controller vibrate? I don't remember. I don't know when when was that technology introduced? I have no idea.
Yeah, it pretty early.
Okay, so like that was in the original, like your controller would vibrate when things would happen. Okay, very cool. Because like to me, again, my like perception of when things happen is so off. Like to me, that feels like brand new technology, but I guess it's been around for a while.
It gets more and more advanced. The things that the DualSense, the PS5 controller,
I know that could do all kinds of things.
That's light years beyond what old school vibration does. But
okay, cool.
I always like Bungie games because they vibrate a lot.
Okay.
Like when I go back to Destiny versus other games, Destiny, I mean, it's like holding the engine block of a car. It's always moving and shaking.
Very cool.
And I like that. I mean, I guess that makes me a reductive baby, but I like that.
It's a human, natural, simple thing. It's primal. Fun. Yeah.
And I think this is a good transition into sort of the last subject I want to play with here, which is an extension of that discussion of mechanics. I want to talk about the game engine and maybe what we can call the Combat Sandbox.
Okay.
Because going back through this game again, you can tell it is Halo 1. You can tell this is sort of the first effort in this franchise and from the studio working on a game this size, because this game made the Xbox. This game is why Microsoft is still making consoles. Even though they have firmly lost to PlayStation for like 3 generations running now. Halo is part of what consecrated them as another player in this industry.
And I think it's what made you like a loyal Xbox player until last year. You didn't
until
own
the
a
PS5.
PlayStation until last year.
Yeah. And Microsoft is 100 miles behind PlayStation and has been for years. But this game and Gears of War and those early classics were so good that, yes, it developed a sort of brand loyalty in me that people usually have to cigarettes.
Right.
Yeah, it's
or like Apple or something.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And these levels, like, they do show their age. They are messy. Some of the design is inconsistent. Some of the levels are way too long or repetitive or confusing. Navigating between them is like just ass backwards sometimes. But what you feel, and this is sort of, I've talked about this before, about loving demos from my favorite musicians.
Yeah.
I like some of the scrappiness and lack of polish. I like that rough edge of seeing potential more than polish.
Okay.
And I think what you can see replaying Halo 1 here is the incredible potential of this franchise shining through. Because it's not just about the mechanics of the level design. It's about the locations, the story, these amazing characters that are being introduced, some of the best music ever written for games.
The music is pretty fantastic, yeah.
And there's this confidence. There's a cockiness to this game. For being the first, there is a cockiness to the limitation of the weapons, the limited nature of there aren't that many weapons, there aren't that many types of enemies, and the art direction can be very sparse. But when I say confidence, I mean simplicity and repetition there. And I like that.
Yeah.
I like games that have some repetition and some predictability to their structure.
Yeah.
And I like simplicity when you can just change like 1 or 2 variables at a time, but there is a baseline experience that I'm getting and getting better at. Because if you throw Master Chief, who's the main character you're playing as, if you throw Chief up against some grunts and jackals and elites, it's always interesting and it's always fun to play. So if you change around all the locations instead of that, but keep that core enemy dynamic, I'm always having fun.
Okay.
And then it just changes like the vistas I'm looking at versus like Halo Infinite that had the one motif, the one visual motif from this game with different types of enemies for 20 hours. I liked the range and confidence of this game being the first one that's constantly shifting through locations. I'm in a cramped hallway for 2 hours and then I'm in this huge frozen lake with snow falling. It's the variety is pretty incredible for this campaign. I feel like modern campaigns, unless it's a $200 million God of War, you're not getting anywhere near the level of variety you got at the turn of the century here in the first Halo.
And how long is the campaign? I know campaigns were much shorter back then, but I'm curious.
I don't know. I wasn't timing it out. I feel like it's about 10 hours, but I could be wrong in either direction there.
Okay. I mean, that sounds about right, but okay.
All right, we just looked it up. I was completely right. It was 10 hours.
I'm very proud of you. That's
good. A little chilling. But yeah, to wrap up, where I was feeling as I finished this experience of replaying Halo Combat Evolved, the bones of this game are incredible. The way the mechanics feel, the balance of mechanics, this precise version of physics. You know, every game has like a different version. Some Mario games, you jump too high, you feel too floaty, and then some of them are just tuned in perfectly. They're locked into how Mario should feel.
Oh, yeah.
That's how I feel about physics in shooters. Like, unless Bungie's doing it, something feels off.
Oh, okay.
It's too floaty, it's too clunky, something's wrong, and I can't define it, but everything is tuned perfectly here.
Awesome.
The enemy and weapon designs, this just felt like rummaging through a treasure chest. And even though I love most of the sequels, or I can find something to love in even the weirdest Halo game, I love the sequels, the reinventions, the callbacks, like all of these elements of this franchise. Playing through this game now, I felt like there was more meat on these bones. Like I wanted more of this.
Okay.
Because Halo 2 feels like a gigantic step forward. Yeah. And so does 3. And then Bungie made a prequel called Halo Reach. And that was great too, but felt different. And then 4 felt different. 5 felt very different.
Yeah.
And then Infinite felt like a throwback that was also weird and new.
Yeah, okay.
I feel like there's never been a true close sequel to Halo 1.
So do you think, like, what I'm thinking and wondering is, like, especially talking about campaign length and how they're so much longer now in most games, what if they took Halo 1 and just expanded it and just like enriched it?
Did a remake.
Yeah, like a full remake with like this, you remember this level where you get to do like that 3 more times with like all these variations, like just a full proper expansion of the existing game. Would you play that, or would that
Of course
feel...
I'd play it.
Okay, but like
I will always play a Halo
But would
game.
that feel like, oh no, but this is like not what Halo 1 is? Like, would that feel too, I don't know, blasphemous?
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of... I'm glad you moved the conversation here, because this is where I want to wrap up. The future of this franchise. Like, Halo is essential for Microsoft, and they will keep making these games for decades. Mm-hmm. So there will be more of this, whether or not we want it. So the question then becomes, how? What type of more are we going to make?
Yeah.
And I think that conversation of... what if they do remakes of the original 3 games? Like ground-up remakes. I'm sure that would be interesting, and there could be some improvements there. But I don't really want that, because I still... like, this game more than holds up. It's still fantastic and great.
You still loved this experience, so maybe why would you want an expansion of that first one?
So I have a different proposition of what they can do.
Okay.
And... like, there is nostalgia for the way games felt at this time. When campaigns were shorter, before everything had to be a 50-hour open world. You spend 100 hours in the new Assassin's Creed, which I did in Valhalla. But most people don't like that anymore. They're kind of sick of that. They want more bespoke, tighter experiences.
Yeah.
And they want this style of shooter, to the point that there's a subgenre now with a name called boomer shooters.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
And they all have like chunky, old 8-bit style graphics.
Why are they called boomer shooters? Because like clearly they mean like boomers didn't play these.
I mean, I played this when I was 9, so I wasn't the main demo that was playing this.
I guess maybe not. Yeah, I guess I can't look past
some
my
of
own
it goes back to the original Doom and Wolfenstein and those games that were a generation earlier.
Okay, sure.
So that you're in the 90s or whatever. So,
and I guess it's hard to say Gen X shooter. That's not as
right.
It's not
Boomer
as smooth.
shooter. It feels good.
Yeah,
and there are more of these all the time. I was playing Warhammer 40k Bolt Gun.
Yeah.
A couple weeks ago, and that is a boomer shooter.
Okay.
In the style, in the level design, it is such a tight callback to the original Doom.
Okay, I see.
And I love those, and everyone else does too. Like, it is a proven market now where you can make a ton of money, you can make a multi-platform, and more importantly, they don't cost $300 million to make, where they're photorealistic. They take 10 years.
And you have to have motion capture and all that. Yeah.
There's a market for like the throwback boomer shooter. I want Microsoft and 343 Industries, which is the new company that makes Halo after Bungie moved on. I want them to make more Halo campaigns and I know they won't do this, but I get to suggest
This is your fantasy, yeah.
I want them to make more campaigns within the Halo 1 engine. Mm-hmm. Where you can tell more stories, those interesting locations that we only spend a level or two in, push it further.
Okay.
Do more there, or the characters that we came to love that they only introduced in Halo 2 or 3.
Yeah.
What were they doing back in this time?
Yeah.
Introduce, play, you can tell more stories within that time, or you can do the remake idea of expanding on what we already love. Do that within the Halo 1 engine. You'll be able to do it faster because all the tools are there, and that's part of the creative limitation.
Yeah.
I mean, when Halo becomes the flagship property for Microsoft, you can throw more money than God at it, right? But those later games are not better than the original ones.
Right.
So that limitation is good. Limitation is always good for creativity. Not a million limitations, but
yeah, of course,
few.
you need to have some freedom and flexibility.
You need something to work about. That's to work around. That's why the White Stripes is the best Jack White project. You need something reining you in that you can react to. I just think that spurs on more creativity than having a blank check. And you just get wandering whatevers. And that's what a lot of the later games became.
Yeah.
So if you had to work and tell stories and do 10-hour campaigns within the Halo 1 engine, you can lean into that and brand it in a retro throwback way. You can make them faster. You can work much faster within an existing sandbox, within an existing physics system and enemy designs. You can riff around with it a little bit, but you're not reinventing the wheel every time.
So
and
they're really
failing.
Yeah. Yeah. So it seems like what you're really describing is not like a remake or a sequel. You're really talking about an expansion. Like using today's terms, like you're not talking about like the next Halo game. You're talking about a Halo 1 expansion.
And this is not unprecedented. So Doom, the original Doom, the original Quake, the original Wolfenstein, these are all like clunky early boomer shooters. Clunky in the way they look. They play amazing.
Okay, yeah.
But when those games are ported to new systems, which happens all the time because there is an endless demand for these games decades after they released.
Okay.
Most of the time, there's some sort of expansion there. With the team porting it, I think they released Quake ports a couple of years ago.
Okay.
And the team that was porting it added a bunch of new levels.
Okay, because we might as well. Like we're already putting. Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So why not do that here?
Why
you can keep making the big new thing. The rumors are that 343 has moved on to working on whatever the new Halo game is going to be after Infinite, because Infinite did not go the way it was supposed to.
Yeah.
They've improved it since launch, but it was supposed to be this unending platform, and that has not materialized.
Lips.
But you can do more with these bones, and people will love it. I'm not saying you have to open up the tools for the community to make their own levels. You could do that, but you can also do it yourselves.
Yeah, that would be interesting, and I feel like wouldn't take it wouldn't be that expensive compared to making a whole new Halo game that everyone's gonna hate.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the whole thing with the Halo Infinite is that they made their own engine. And that took forever, and it was
really
hard
expensive
to work with.
Yeah. Ugh,
because you couldn't pull in people who had made other games on an existing shared engine. They had to learn this new thing.
Okay.
And now for the next Halo, they're going to the engine everyone else uses.
Yeah, okay.
So all of these problems could be avoided. I'm not saying I'm better at making Halo games than 343 is, but this idea, replaying this game reminded me of the experience we had doing episodes, go check those out, about the original Star Wars trilogy.
Oh, yeah, those are fun. Mm-hmm.
The third one sucks, but the first two are fantastic.
Our episodes are good. You mean the third movie?
I mean the movie. That's a great catch. I mean the movie. What I wanted from Star Wars after rewatching those classics is more of that.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean more Star Wars with an unlimited budget doing new stuff.
Ugh, yeah.
What I mean,
we've gotten plenty of that.
I want the spirit of these originals.
Yes.
Which means very little budget. It means using miniatures and paintings
and practical effects.
George Lucas just riffing in the desert with $20 to his name.
Yep.
Like those kind of scrappy, inspiring, creative new worlds. That's what I want.
Yeah.
And if you did new stuff, if you had new enemies and new locations and whatever, but maybe you worked within that Halo or 1 engine, I think people would have been more receptive to it.
I agree. I think you're right.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if there's something to this idea, but I think it would be really fun and fairly low risk to try.
Yeah. I think that would be fun. So basically what's happened is replaying the game has made you realize how great a game that first game was, and you just want more of that.
Yeah, and I might replay Halo 2 and 3, and maybe we'll come back and talk about those if there's something new to add here. But yeah, I really appreciated this one.
Yeah.
It was a pure nostalgia. It wasn't as, melancholy and miserable as replaying Fallout 3. But yeah, this was a interesting experience to go back to this game.
Yeah. Well, and here's a final question for you to really bring it back down to the realm of true possibility. I know that I started this episode saying this is not my kind of game.
Yeah.
As we're talking about it, I now feel like, would I enjoy playing this first Halo game? Do you think I could get into it?
I think there are a handful of levels that you would enjoy, and maybe this is a good button to end things on, because the best thing to me about this generation of Xbox, of Halo and Gears at the beginning, is that you could play through all of these campaigns in split-screen co-op.
Yeah.
And that's how I did that. That's how I played through all of these games with my dad. And later on, I played through some of these games with a bunch of friends at the time, and then eventually Tristan. And like that shared experience is part of why I love these worlds so much. And of course, in the last couple of Halo games, they haven't had split screen co-op.
I feel like they just don't do that with games anymore.
But here's the thing.
And I don't know why.
Here's the thing, Maggie. They have it in Baldur's Gate.
Oh, that's true. They do.
And they promised it for Halo Infinite.
Yeah.
And then they just didn't do it and backed off of it.
Yeah.
But if they can put it in Baldur's Gate, you're telling me Larian Studios has more money than 343?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, 100-hour, one of the most complicated and intricate and impressive, groundbreaking games of all time can have.
Yeah. Why can't freaking Halo have it? Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm not even, I guess, in that position. I mean, I've played the last couple alone at this point, but it does speak to that original spirit.
Yeah.
That I love these games so much. I mean, we used to do 4-player Halo.
Yeah.
With all of us on one cramped little map.
Yeah.
Just, racing to find the rocket launcher and blow up your friends.
That is essential to the 2000s adolescent experience. Again, I didn't play games growing up, but I would go to friends' houses, especially because I had a lot of male friends because I was in tech theater and stuff.
Sure.
We would be at someone's house and they'd all be playing Halo. I'd be sitting there watching okay, cool. But it was so important to communal friendship gatherings, and I just feel I don't know if it's the pandemic or what, but game developers just don't seem interested in promoting that kind of collaboration and social way of playing games anymore. I mean, you do stuff online, obviously.
That's what I was going to say.
That's what everybody does now. But it's why can't you go to a friend's house and play a game together? Why do you have to have a fucking LAN party to play a game together?
There's a chicken in the eggs kind of chicken in the egg, not eggs. Problem
they have
there,
multiple eggs.
Where I think the society is sort of more insular than it used to feel, but some of that is because I'm an adult and I used to be a kid, and you don't have sleepovers as much. I mean, we do with Tristan, but you don't have them as much as you used to.
You and I have a sleepover every night.
Yes, we do. But you can play most of these campaigns online with people.
Yeah.
So that is something.
But it's not the same as sitting on a couch together.
You're preaching
split
to the choir.
Screen. I mean, it's not the same.
I mean, you and I played through the first level of Gears together.
We did when I was
ago.
Yeah. It was my prep. It was me preparing for Hogwarts Legacy because I'd never done a third person. You have to control the camera type of game, and I was I really want to be able to do this so I could play Hogwarts Legacy, and so we had a whole thing. Anyway, it was fun.
I can't believe I convinced you to try Halo. That's fun.
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably try it for 10 minutes. Be I don't like it, but I'll try it. I mean, I've never felt like I want to try it, and I feel like I want to try it now. So you're doing the right thing.
Well, thank you for joining us for this episode. We do episodes every Tuesday and Friday. Tuesday are wild cards like this. Friday, we're doing chapter by chapter through Game of Thrones, just like we did for The Witcher and Lord of the Rings. If you like the show and want even more episodes and you want to support us, you can go over on Patreon, $2 a month. You can get the whole back catalog of bonus episodes and a new bonus episode every month. Thank you very much for joining us, and we will be back on Friday with a brand new episode.
Bye.